All right, we'll go ahead and get started this afternoon. Hello, all. My name is Casey Harris, and I am a program coordinator with the Ohio Academy of Science. And I have with me today Sheila Kubik, who is also a program coordinator. She's going to wave. She doesn't feel well today. And I have Allison Gruber, and she is an administrative coordinator with the Ohio Academy of Science. So thank you for joining today, and we're going to go ahead and get started. We're just going to talk a little bit about the ISEF forms and what we need to do for that component of a Science Day project. So we do have an agenda for today. We're going to talk about first the required ISEF forms for all students. Then we're going to talk about the project review committees and what they are. We will touch on additional ISEF forms that students may need depending on the nature of their project. We will talk about some other professionals, what the definitions of these professionals are, and the signatures that may be needed from them. We're going to talk about how to upload forms to a project board project submission template, including where we put the forms and how to actually upload them. I'm going to share some additional resources, and then we'll open it up for questions. So what are ISEF forms and why do we need them? Ultimately, the purpose of the ISEF forms are for safety and compliance with laws for both the student researcher and other people or other organisms involved in their research. So overall, it's the responsibility of us as adults to ensure that the students are conducting their research in an ethical and safe manner. So that is why we do these. So these are all of the ISEF forms that we will touch on today. The first three that you see there in red, purple, and blue are the forms that are required for all students, and then we will discuss these additional forms and who would need them and what is required for those forms. So like I said, all students are required to have ISEF Form 1, the checklist for adult sponsor, ISEF Form 1A, the student checklist and their research plan, and ISEF Form 1B, which is the approval form. Something to note, if you are having students work in a team, and you can have teams up to 3 members, each member must submit a Form 1B, but the team members will jointly submit Forms 1 and 1A. So you only need one Form 1 and one Form 1A if there's a team. And then, of course, depending on the type of project, you may need to fill out some additional forms. So a really good place to start with the ISEF forms would be to go to the ISEF forms rules wizard. And here is the link. And what we'll do is we'll share this out after we are finished with this tutorial. We'll share the slide deck out and you will have access to any links that we have in here. But the rules wizard is a really nice tool that walks you through each individual project. And then at the end, it shows you what ISEF forms you should have your students fill out. So we're going to take a trip to the rules wizard. And I'm going to fill one out as an example to show you how they work. So I am doing a project to see if my pet dog is left-handed or right-handed. So I am going to select vertebrate animals because I'm using my dog. And then I will go to the next page. And then it says, will your experiment be conducted in one of the following sites? And you have all these different places where you can conduct your experiment. I'm going to do mine at home with my dog. You can also check if this is a continuation from a previous year, and this for me is not. So now when it comes to my dog, which is a vertebrate, I need to decide exactly what my experiment entails. So is it non-invasive and non-intrusive behavioral or observational study on a vertebrate animal? And that is going to be the case. So I'm going to check that one. And of course, you want to read through all of these and make sure that none of these other ones apply. Go to the next page. So this one asks about human participants. I have no human participants in my project, so I'm going to select none of the above. And then if I did have humans, what humans do I have? Humans under 18, and so on, economically or educationally disadvantaged, 18 and older, or none of the above. So I'm going to select none. I'm not using any pre-existing human data sets. It now asks me about hazardous chemicals, activities, or devices. And you can see this list here. I am not going to be using any of these, so I'm going to select none. Hazardous agents, as you can see, bacteria, viruses, isolating organisms from any environment. I am not using any of these, but it's good to read through the list to see what these are. So I will select none. And now it tells me what ISEF forms I will need to fill out. So of course, every student's going to get 1A, and 1B because those are required for all students. Official abstract form. We do not require this, so you can ignore this. Vertebrate animal form. I need this one. So I will have to fill out 1A, 1B. We don't need an official abstract form, so make note of that, please. And I will need the vertebrate animal form. And so then I can click on them and download them. So that's how you use the rules wizard. I think it is a really great tool and encourage everyone to use that with their students because it really does take a lot of the guesswork out with trying to choose the form that you think is appropriate for your students' projects. So we're going to go through Form 1. This is what it looks like. This is the checklist for adult sponsors. And as you can see, the student will put their name and their project title, and then they will check these boxes. The first 3 they should check. And then if their project involves humans, vertebrate animals, they would check whichever of these boxes. And then number 5, items to be completed for all projects, they are going to want to check the boxes that apply to their project. And then check what additional information here. This is similar to the rules wizard. So if they have humans, then they know they need to fill out this human participant form, the sample of informed consent form, and a qualified scientist form. So this kind of is another guide to help with the forms that students need. So they will check the boxes that apply to them. Whoops. And then at the bottom, the adult sponsor will print their name, and the adult sponsor can be a teacher, a parent, a professor, or another professional scientist. So print, sign, and then date, phone, and email. So that is Form 1. Form 1A is the student checklist and research plan. So the student checklist, the student will fill out all this information at the top. And then their actual start date for their experiment or their prototype development, this will be after the date that you put on Form 1. So it just you need to make sure that this date is after the date on Form 1 and then also after the date on Form 1B, which we'll look at next. So this is also part of Form 1A. This is the student's research plan or project summary, and it is required for all projects. We offer a research plan template for hypothesis-based research and the engineering design projects. And so if the students fill out the that research plan template that we provide, then they have met all of the requirements in the red box, and they can just attach that research plan to Form 1A. I will also say that the research plan is the first part of their final written report, so it's worthwhile to use the research plan templates that we provide in Project Board for download, because it'll help the students develop the first part of their final written report, and then it can be also submitted for this Form 1A student checklist and research plan requirement. And we have the link right here to the research plan templates in Project Board. If students are using human participants, vertebrate animals, potentially hazardous biological agents, or hazardous chemicals, activities, and devices, they will need to read through this section of Form 1A and add this additional information to their research plan. So that is really important to note. Okay, Form 1B, students will fill out the top portion of Form 1B only. So they'll put their name, their signature, and the date. And again, this date has to be prior to the date for when they start their experiment. And this is the one that needs to be sent home because a parent or a guardian needs to sign this top part of Form 1B. You don't need to do anything else with Form 1B unless you need SRC or IRB approval for projects containing humans, vertebrates, potentially hazardous biological agents, or research conducted at a regulated research institution. And we'll talk about SRC and IRBs here in a second. So what you need to focus on for Form 1B with your students is simply getting that parent guardian signature and getting this form returned back to the school. So a little bit about the SRC and the IRB. SRC stands for the Scientific Review Committee, and this is going to be a committee that looks over projects that need additional forms beyond Forms 1, 1A, and 1B. So that's going to be what we'll talk about next. Any projects that use vertebrate animals, any projects that have hazardous biological agents, any projects that are, have an increased risk with them. An IRB stands for an Institutional Review Board. And it's important to note that an SRC can serve as an IRB if the project is done at school. And so an IRB is going to be the review board that oversees student projects in which they're using humans in their projects. So who is on the SRC or the IRB in the school? That's going to be a school administrator or a STEM career and research person if you have one, an educator not associated with the project, and most likely the school nurse. So these three people need to be assembled, and any projects that require additional ISEF forms beyond Forms 1, 1A, and 1B, those forms, including 1, 1A, and 1B, need to be sent to the Scientific Review Committee or the Institutional Review Board, probably the combination. It'll be the same three people for review, and these people will sign off in the appropriate spots on Form 1B and any additional forms for the students who need this. And this has to happen prior to when the students start their experiments or prior to when the students start developing their prototypes. So this is really important that you collect these ISEF forms, assemble this committee, get the forms off to this committee so they can be signed in a timely manner and returned back to the students so the students can start their experimentation. Okay, we're going to talk a little bit about some of the additional forms now. If you're using human participants, and this includes if you're interviewing human participants, providing surveys, testing prototypes on human participants, you will need to have that second part of Form 1B signed by the IRB prior to experimentation or prototype testing. If this study is being done at a regulated research institution, you will need to have Form 1C filled out. If this project requires a qualified scientist, you will need Form 2. All human participant projects require Form 3, the risk assessment, all of them. So at the very minimum, you'll need Form 3 and Form 4. This is the human participants form. And then the sample informed consent form. And this is just the form that's filled out. And then this sample informed consent form, after it's filled out, you will make copies of it. And any person that is participating in the survey or the interview or the prototype testing or whatever the student is doing needs to sign this form and give it back to the student. So what I would do is have the student fill out one of these, make a bunch of copies for the student, give the stack of copies to them, and then have them pass these out to the people that they're going to be collecting information from for their project. And then keep these in a safe place. Once you have these forms filled out, you want to make sure that you are saving them in a safe space. So we'll talk about that here in a little bit. These are the forms for human participants. All right, vertebrate animals. So if you are using your dog to test if they're left-handed or right-handed, and you are doing your study at home or at school or at a field site, you will again need the second part of Form 1B signed by the SRC prior to experimentation or prototype testing. You will need Form 2, a qualified scientist, and Form 5A, which is the vertebrate animal form. And this one will need a veterinarian signature. So this will be outside of the SRC committee. If you are conducting your research at a regulated research institution, you will need that second part of Form 1B signed, Form 1C, which is the regulated research institution form, Form 2, which is the qualified scientist form, Form 5B, which is similar to 5A, but this one is for if you're doing your research at the regulated research institution. And then you'll also have to fill out Form 6A and 6B if the study involves tissues and or body fluids. Okay, if students are using potentially hazardous biological agents, and this is for home, school, field site, or at a regulated research institution, then the students will need the following forms. Again, box 2A, signature prior to experimentation or prototype testing. 1C, if it's at a regulated research institution. Form 2, qualified scientist. Form 3, risk assessment when applicable. And then Form 6A and 6B for studies involving tissues and bodily fluids. So potentially hazardous biological agents is experimentation involving the culturing of potentially hazardous biological agents. That is prohibited in a home environment. So if they are going to culture anything that's hazardous, which includes bacteria, viruses, molds, rDNA, vertebrate tissue, and fluids, then this needs to be done at a regulated research institution. The next thing we have are hazardous chemicals, activities, or devices, and this goes for at a home, school, or field site, or at a regulated research institution. Students will need that second part of Form 1B filled out, 1C, the regulated research institution form, Form 2, the qualified scientist form, and Form 3, the risk assessment form. And then there are additional rules for the following regulated areas. If a student's using a DEA controlled substance, prescription drugs, alcohol and tobacco, firearms and explosives, regulated drones, and or using doing a study involving radiation, they will need additional there are additional rules and they may need additional forms. So again, I've linked the information here for if you have students using these. I don't think there are probably many students using any of these regulated areas though, but I could be wrong. So on these forms, you're going to see adult sponsor, direct supervisor, qualified scientist. So wanted to go through who those people can be. So the adult sponsor can be a teacher, a parent, a professor, or a professional scientist. The direct supervisor does not need an advanced degree, but they must be familiar with the student's project and agree to any training that may be necessary for the student to conduct their research. And they can also serve as the adult sponsor. So you may have the parent sign off as the adult sponsor, and as the teacher, you may be the direct supervisor. A qualified scientist is someone who's earned a doctoral or professional degree in a scientific discipline related to the student's area of research, or it can be a science teacher. So as the teacher, you can also be the qualified scientist. Okay, so I said I would revisit, what do we do with all these forms when we get them filled out and signed? Well, there's a couple of ways that you can complete this task. So all of the forms are fillable PDFs. So you can access these forms online, you can download them to your computer, and you can save them and fill them in and then save them on your computer until it's time to do something with them. Or you can print them, fill them out, scan them back in, and then upload them to your space where you are going to save them until it's time to do something with them. So there's a couple of ways. In the past, when I've worked with students and filled out ISEF forms, what we have done is we have created a folder in their Google Drive accounts or in their OneDrive accounts called ISEF forms. We've gone to the website to grab the forms that they need. We've downloaded and saved them into that folder. We've filled them all out online. The kids take their Chromebooks home. The parents fill out Form 1B. Then they're all saved in a folder labeled in their drive until we are ready to do something with them. So any students who need to fill out any forms beyond forms 1A, and 1B, then what you can do is share that folder with the SRC committee, and then they can fill them out online. So that is what I've found to be the easiest thing to do, is just to keep everything all online and try not to print them and scan them and do all of those things, because that can be time consuming if you have a lot of students with a lot of different projects and each of them have at minimum 3 forms. So this is what I usually do when I'm working with groups of teachers. So when you are ready to do something with these forms, like submit your project to the Regional Science Day, you will start a submission project in Project Board, and then you will see what's highlighted in orange there, the required forms box. You will click on this, and this is where you will be able to upload those forms. So what happens when you click on the required forms box? Next thing you'll do is you'll click Edit Section. Then you will click a plus sign down here. Then you will click this. This is the document image. This will allow you to upload a document. Once it's uploaded, then you press Save. And then you go through the process all again until you get all the required forms uploaded here. Then what happens is when the students submit their project to the Regional Science Day, the Regional Science Day coordinators will open this section. They will look at the students' forms, make sure that they are filled in properly, that they don't need any additional forms that they accidentally forgot. And if everything is good to go, they will approve that project for the Regional Science Day. If there happens to be a form that the student forgot to upload or they need to fill out an additional form, those Science Day coordinators will reach out to you, let you know, and then you can help the student get the forms and then get it uploaded to this section and resubmit the project. So here are some additional resources that can help you with ISEF forms. Here's the rules wizard that we went through earlier. We have I think it's a one-page guide. It might be 2 pages, guide to ISEF forms that contains all the information that is in this presentation. Here's the direct link to all the ISEF forms. And then if you want to read the detailed ISEF forms rules, the link to that is here as well. And that has detailed information about human participants, vertebrate animals, hazardous biological agents, and so on. The ISEF forms are also available in a student's submission project, but I suggest that you grab them from this direct link here because students are supposed to complete this prior to experimentation. And our submission portal does not open until December 9th. So if you're having students start their experimentation before December 9th, then I suggest you go to this direct link to grab the forms that you need. And that's all that I have today for the ISEF forms tutorial. If you have any questions, now's the time for them.